Hi, Dina.
Hi Dana, how are you, حبيبتي?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Finally, the sun is out here in Montreal.
Oh, nice.
It's such a weird summer.
More,
We haven't been getting much sun, and it's a lot of rain. It feels like we're in London, I
really?
swear. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. This summer has been like crazy. Uh, and I think it is affecting everybody, like people around you. You feel like, oh my God, we're so tired of this.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
We
only
need.
been to Montreal once, in the summer, and it was gorgeous. It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, in the summer it's perfect. But like
yeah,
I'm telling you, this year till now, it's only yesterday and today that we have like amazing summer, like weather at least.
yeah.
And we get like I could use the pool
Mm.
because like I was telling one of my friends the other day, it's like I can't even use the pool. She's like, well, it's in your head. Use the pool, get a bathrobe and just like put it on you when you're done, you know?
Is it cold though, or just rainy? Like,
Well, it was like 15 degrees.
oh, that's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. Like every now and then I put the AC on auto so that when it's cold, it just automatically triggers the heat.
Yeah,
And then when the weather is nice, it becomes like a AC kind of.
yeah.
So anyway,
Oh.
yeah.
Hmm.
Do everything well with the baby, with the grandson and
Yeah,
everything.
we miss him. It's
Yeah.
going to be a few months before they can come from Tokyo, so
Okay.
they have
They're
to.
gonna come in the summer, inshallah.
Well, the baby's Canadian, but because he's born outside of Canada, it takes
Yes.
3 months to get his Canadian
Passport.
no, the citizenship certificate.
Okay, 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 okay. Yeah, they're being
And
very good.
once he gets that, then they can apply for the passport. So it's been a bit of
Okay,
a wait. Yeah.
okay. I think they changed the laws also recently about that because first they said they were saying that if a baby's born outside of Canada, that he can't or she can't give the citizenship eventually to their kids.
Well, his dad is a pure Canadian. So
Okay,
they didn't have that issue because his dad is
amazing,
yeah. But
amazing.
anyway, we just have to wait. What can we do?
Yeah.
Hi,
Uh,
ladies. Hi, Rania. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Nermeen.
Hi, hello.
How's everybody doing today?
Hi, how are you? All good.
All good? Amazing. I feel like we should wait a couple more minutes but this book is gonna take a long time. We should have started yesterday, I think. How many of you have finished reading this masterpiece, the trilogy? Just so we know.
I haven't.
I
I
haven't
haven't.
either.
Okay.
But Anna.
Okay, so you guys gonna be, I guess, okay with, finding out things that
Yeah.
happen? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm depending on my memory of the movies.
Uh, well, okay, if you haven't read the book, do you know the whole story from beginning to end at least?
I
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
same.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Because I thought I did, but after I finished reading it, I realized I have no recollection of the full movie, or the full story. I think I finished watching it. I only watched a little bit of it. I definitely did not know half of what I was reading, or maybe it was left out in the movies, but I mean some of the big things, like all the deaths and everything, those I did not remember any of that. That was all brand new reading it. All right, so oh my gosh. I've been
But actually, the movie is the book is very colorful. Like I'm surprised that I'm more interested in it than the actual movie. The
why
way the way
why are
he
you
writes, I've never.
surprised?
Yeah,
Why are you
he's very
surprised?
colorful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The his writing is, and did you read it in English or Arabic, Nirmin?
Arabic.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. Arabic, and it's actually difficult Arabic. يعني
Yeah.
Arabic that I need some sentences I need to read several times.
Really?
بس really يعني أنا نجيب محفوظ ما قريتلوش. I didn't read any. I watched the movies بس
Mhm.
reading books I didn't.
Okay. Feel better now.
His writing is really
brilliant.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah. I think I only remember reading, and I don't even remember which one, something really short at AUC. I think remember when we had to take the course, we had to take Arabic literature and translation or something like that, one of those courses. And one of the books was one of his books, but nothing to, and ever since then I haven't read anything of his. I read it in English, and the translation, and obviously based off the original, the translation is it's like you're living inside the characters. You're living inside, the homes. You're living. It's so brilliant, the translation. I can only imagine what the original is like. And I was just telling my kids right now that I just finished it, and how ashamed I am that it took me all my whole life to read Naguib Mahfouz, yani, who's, you know, Naguib Mahfouz in our culture. So if you are still reading, press on because it is worth it. If you haven't, um, don't miss it. Like, I'm very excited to read more of his books after reading this. He really is a brilliant, brilliant author, definitely. So based on what you have read so far, what would you say? Nirmeen said it's very, very, colorful. She's reading in Arabic. How many of you are also reading in Arabic? Just so we know. Arabic.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Did you finish, Sandra?
But it was difficult, like Nirmeen was saying. I said, like, I mean, probably this is the last generation who will be able to read this kind of Arabic.
You
Because
think?
this is the difficult level of Arabic. Like, I mean, like it's nice. I loved it. He's
Yeah.
very descriptive. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
But it's not like, like some of the words I did not understand, but I have to just, move on because I couldn't stop it at
Yes.
each and every word. And he's very descriptive, so it doesn't matter. He's choosing more than one word to
Yeah.
explain the same situation. So I just moved on, but
Yeah.
it's difficult.
Yeah. I think one of my next challenges is going to be to try and read, maybe not this one, but a shorter book of his in Arabic to try and get that because if the flavor of it was so true and coming through so genuinely in the translation, I can't imagine what the original is like. Hi, Amel. So here's my biggest, maybe we can start with that. Your biggest takeaway from this book in terms of the theme, in terms of the character. What is the thing that, like, after even if you're not finished with it, but you watch the movie, what is the biggest thing that you take away from this book? Because there is so much that you can take away. We could literally be discussing it, for if we could sit here for hours and hours. So let's start with the biggest thing that has struck you and is staying with you from this book.
Well, okay, you can start. Please start.
No, go ahead, Nermeen. Go ahead. I'll listen to you first.
Okay. Um, well, for me, because I'm still in the first series, like this poor Amina, يعني I felt for her big time. Yeah, I felt for her big time. And this whole culture, this whole as if it's a different country, as if it's different country, different people, different. It's so amazing how things have turned around.
Mm.
Regardless, I'm not. I wouldn't say if they've turned around to the good or the bad, because I actually love the way that the way the family is, and the connection between the brothers and the sisters and the house and the traditions. I like that. But Amina, يعني, I felt for her a lot. And the عبد الجواد, the guy figure, I don't see any difference between the male figures then and now, of this whole different. They lead different lives, and thinking that each one is correct because they're giving, he's giving يعني كل حياة بيعيشها as as the book says, and he's giving rights to his house, his religious and what have you. It just it's and for me, Amina was really, I especially the way he writes about her in the book, and the way he explains her character and the things that go into her mind was my biggest pause. And how did we develop, how women developed from then till now.
Anybody else have thoughts about Amina specifically?
I actually, so I at the beginning I was like really against Amina. Like, I mean, like, come on. But I know it was in the 1919, so can't judge. But I mean, at the beginning, I was like, it's so annoying that she can't go out, and he's having all the fun and everything outside the house, but inside it's just such a hypocrisy. Like, I did not like that part. And about how she actually waited inside the house for 20 years almost. Like, she said that she's been married for 20 years and then he kicked her out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. And the other one that I did not like, when he was actually the one eating first and then everyone else would eat after him. It's like, these are the things like, you're like, no, no, no. But now you look at it, like, things have really changed. Thank God we don't have that now. But I mean, even sometimes I would hear them and say, like, no, let the women go first, like, to eat first, and then we will go next. It's like, yeah, I like that more. But yeah, like Nermeen was saying, it was Amina, and the pain that she felt and how it changed her, that she started to, like, to have a role, and she was able to maybe, barely, like, she spoke up, but I mean, like, she was there, like, she started to evolve, her character, it started to evolve, and she wasn't passive as before. So I like that.
Dina, go ahead.
What struck me was the contradictions, right? The contradictions in the society, the contradictions of Said giving himself the right to do whatever he wants, and then with his kids, he's like, no, no, no. The contradiction between him meeting the religious people and telling them that he just came back from a night out with the boys and drinks and whatnot, and then he goes and prays the Friday prayer.
Yeah.
This was like, oh, okay, okay, like, what is this? Either you're this or that. You can't have it both, kind of thing. And then, as for Amina, yes, she struck me too. And all I kept thinking was, how did she not feel that he's a playboy, that he's doing stuff outside the house? How was she so naive to think that, you know, she's his one and only kind of thing? And how obedient was she? Like, I can't see myself, like, now, even let's say with my husband or anything, that I don't feel that, okay, you're cheating on me kind of thing. Like, how did that go through her head?
Actually, she knew.
She
Actually,
knew.
she knew.
I mean,
She felt, yeah. Actually, she knew. But according to her, like when she used to speak to her mother would tell her, "Yani, the best thing that he's not remarrying like his father, because it seems like his father was always marrying, like having multiple marriages." But
okay.
she said she was okay since he's not marrying again. That's fine. Yani, turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I
But
missed that part.
yeah, but it felt like that was just accepted across the board. I mean, not just in
Yeah.
their household.
Yeah, yeah.
He was going out with all his friends. They were all doing the same thing to their wives. We just their stories were not part of the
Yeah.
of the plot. But every single man that he went out with, every single man that joined him in the nightly parties, they were all doing the same thing. They were, and I think it's more than just a contradiction, Dean. I think it's a flat out hypocrisy and double standard, you know,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm,
is,
mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, I think I cannot wrap my head around it. Obviously, it existed in this way, and obviously, whether the women knew directly or indirectly, what they did know for sure was that they had to turn a blind eye. So the fact that, how they were able to remain like Amina, the versions of Amina, because then you have different versions of how the women dealt with it. They all still accepted it on some level, but the versions of Amina who dealt with it without once, you know, faltering, like her obedience. She never questioned her obedience. She never questioned her duty until the very end, despite knowing everything that he's done, despite whatever she might have suspected. We might think of her as this, like, weak, obedient woman, but that takes a lot of strength. I mean, imagine yourself in this position. Are you still going to wake up every night and stay up and wait for this man and take care of him and do everything that she does when you are even suspicious, remotely suspicious of where he's coming home from? I don't know. For me, Amina was a mix of weak and power. Resilience, at least.
Yeah, resilience. I would say resilience
Yeah.
because again, she did not have any financial independence, right? So that too plays a huge part in her character. Like when she went out and he found out and then he sent her to her mom,
Mm,
she was sitting there and just like worrying about, okay, what am I gonna do, right? How am I gonna live? What's gonna happen to me? Because that's all she knows. Being part of his household. But I like the fact that through the stories as well that she started evolving because she started trying to make him when her son Kamal wanted to do something and she was trying to persuade Sisayid to understand where Kamal is coming from, what he wants, and so on and so forth. Whether Sisayid did it or not, but she was trying to voice it, you know. The hard part for me as well with Amina was when her son died
mm,
and he shut her up. Even grief, like he wouldn't let her grieve, right?
yeah.
So that was powerful. The other thing about the book was the way people were so patriotic, you know, that
Yeah.
they got together on one cause and made sure that, we're gonna die till we get our independence. And now, when you look at the world that we're living in, we don't have that anymore. That spirit of being one to liberate yourself against, any kind of violence or against what's
Yeah.
happening in the world, right? So that was very, very impressive for me, honestly.
Um, on on that point, I thought it was very interesting because obviously he talks about the people who live the that part of society that lives in Palace Walk and in that part of Cairo, but they mingle very easily. There's sort of a fluidity between them and then the people who live in the mansions, and Garden City and all of that. And for me, and I think to your point, Dina, it was because it was a time of unity. People, even though they were aware of the differences in class, the differences in income, the differences in mannerisms and how they live and levels of education and how they treat women and the freedoms that women had, it was still very, very easy for them, almost natural to socialize. When you see Kamel with his friends, when you see later on in the book, it's even though it's a structured society, it was still a very fluid society, I think much more than now. Even though they had, we talked about Pride and Prejudice, um, where they talk about the different, what's right, what's wrong, when it comes to marriage, the right type of person, the right type of man, the right type of woman, and they all have, their boxes that they need to tick. Definitely had that, but I didn't feel like you were talking about two very different types of Egyptians in this book. I felt like it was just Egyptians. They lived a bit differently. They had a little bit of different traditions and cultures, depending on what neighborhood they came from, but it felt like they were a unified Egyptian identity. I don't know if anybody had that experience. I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I loved it too.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I mean, they all sort of spoke at in the same way. They all sort of had the same um, intellectual wavelength. The ones who come from the more traditional side of Cairo and the ones who come from the more modern side of Cairo. I didn't feel like there was a difference in intellect. Maybe there was a difference in income, a difference in traditions, but the intellect level was uh, very much, they could have conversations together. Like now, I think if you take people, the same types of people in Egypt and try to put them together, I don't think it would be that smooth. No?
Yeah. Yeah. You mean that like the difference between the different culture, it was not as wide
I mean, these were
there.
obviously different socioeconomic classes, right, in the book. Okay. But they just got along and they were able to converse and they were able to unite and they were able to, if there were big differences, they were able to put them aside. Like it wasn't a deterrent the way we might experience now. It's not a deterrent where you live in Cairo to where to, that doesn't sort of determine who you are or what you are, or who you can be friends with or who you can have a conversation with. I just felt
Because maybe they have something they were work all of them were focused on one target. I think it's the English
like
people
I think
to
that was
kick.
definitely it. They had,
Yeah.
like Ina said, they had the one thing regardless, unifying them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the level of education for everybody was at a high standard available to everybody. So you didn't have, I mean, you had the people living in the mansions, the Shaddad family, everybody went to, Gamat al-Qahira. Like you didn't have the different institutions teaching. Everybody had the access to the same level of education. And I think that lent itself to having everybody be at the same intellectual level. I mean, from what I've heard, Cairo University at the time was one of the most amazing universities in the world in terms of the subjects, in terms of the quality of professors, in terms of the research. So you can see that reflected in the people in the education. It's like everybody was really educated. Let's put it that way. And I don't know how that sounds, but everybody sounded really educated and really informed and really able to debate and really able to think. There was no, how you see people today and like they might seem superficial. I mean, even the belly dancers had something substantial to say. They weren't superficial. I don't know. That was just it was I sometimes had a hard time keeping track of like, oh, okay, so this is okay, so she's from this background and he's from this background, but they're speaking on the same level, everybody.
Yeah, even Amina at one point she was discussing politics,
Yeah.
you know? So again, the education mattered, but also again the people were actually feeling that this is a big cause that we have to all unite towards, and that they were giving it their all.
Yeah.
You don't see that now.
No.
Don't see that. And it's again, we did have back then, from what I remember, is that you had different classes. Now it's either you have it or you don't. So there's no middle class.
Yeah.
And that impacts the structure of the society itself.
But I just feel like it didn't bother them then. Like it wasn't an issue.
No, it didn't. It
It
didn't
was a
bother him,
non-issue. It was like
but it existed.
it existed.
When you but you don't see it, but now because it's the difference is huge
Yeah.
between top class and the bottom class. This is where you see it, and this is where we you find that it's very hard for you to get along from
Mm.
someone that is like really, really kind of, I don't want to say the word beneath you, but you know,
Yeah.
it becomes a struggle because also now it's our societies are based on titles,
Mm.
And
based
another thing is that
which
they can
school you
see.
graduated from, which this, which that, which club are you going to, which that. But over the back then, I don't think that was an issue either, you know?
I mean, they had
No,
the,
I
there
think
were a few things like, when he wanted to become a teacher instead of becoming a lawyer. So they had some of this distinctions, at least when it came to professions. But I don't even, I mean, that still wasn't a deterrent. Like just because he became a teacher doesn't mean that he wasn't able to mingle with the rest of society. On the contrary, you know. Um, I mean, there were definitely ways of thinking in terms of what's appropriate, the thing that's been with us, since the beginning of time, what's appropriate for our family, our society, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to professions, when it comes to education. I don't think that's changed. But what I feel is really, really unique about this time period, or at least the way that Mahfouz presents it, is that it's not a final deterrent. They're like little hiccups, but everybody gets over it and everybody still gets along despite the differences. Sandra, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to add that at the time of the story, everyone went to the same university at the end. It
Yes.
didn't matter which school. They all met together in the same place. But now the problem is we do not meet somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the gap is getting bigger, and each in their own bubble. And when they come together, it's a shock. And another thing is with the social media, everyone knows everything about the other person. Like the high society, they like probably they don't really pay attention to what's going on outside their bubble. But for the rest, they do know where they go out, where what amount they're spending, because everything is there, and everyone is posting everything. So which makes there like you will find bitterness, but
Yeah.
back then I'm sure there was bitterness as well, but
Nobody knew.
when
Nobody could possibly know.
no, yes, and another thing is like because only few were educated, but the more when like I mean imagine if you do get your chance to be educated and then you graduate and then you don't get the chance to work where you're supposed to work,
Hmm.
and you become like you have to accept a job that's beneath your qualification. So that like it grow like you have bitterness, like and so on, and you see the other person getting what you deserve as well. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
everyone is getting like the education and the social media, and they can see. So it has so many things. That's it.
Everything was a secret back then. I mean, can you imagine any of these men being able to gallivant in the evenings the way that they were gallivanting and get away with it? No way. I mean, they really did get away with it. Anybody else want to share their big takeaway from the book or from the story, even if you haven't finished the book? If you've just watched the movie, you know of the story, you know of the characters, you know how it ends. Dina, go ahead.
I didn't like the character of Maryam.
Oh,
Uh, no, I didn't like her
okay. How come?
because she was in love with the what's his name that passed away, right?
Fahmy.
And then she got Fahmi, and then she got married to his brother later on. It's
Yeah.
like this for me also was like
Well, apparently, I mean, the promiscuity was really on a different level. Like they could all just sleep with the brothers and the fathers and cross over, and it wasn't really an issue, I think, at that time.
I didn't like her. And to your point, I also found it very hard how Sayed accepted the
Yeah,
fact that, the belly dancer that he was with got married to his son. And then it's all like, yeah. And then the cousins, when one passed away, he wants to marry the other cousin,
yeah,
which was like, okay, guys, like what's going
yeah.
on?
I think I mean, it was clearly that was just very, normal behavior at the time. It's very hard for us to imagine. Um, I think for me, what kept uh because it's such also a political book, right? And the history of Egypt and the story of Egypt's fight for independence and all of this. I don't know how many of you noticed or paid attention to what extent the female characters were all and their relationship with the respective spouses, fiancés, whoever, was sort of like a reflection, like if the female character is Egypt, like if we take Amina as symbolizing Egypt, right? And she's sort of like the very old kind of traditional Egypt. And then she's sort of, the spiritual Egypt. And then maybe you have her daughters, her maybe the ones who are like Egypt that's trying to sort of take some steps out of the traditional mold. And then you see the relationships, all of them with their men, the ones who exploit them, the ones who respect them, the ones who don't want them to change, the ones who are happy for them to change. It was, for me, I think, a brilliant way that Naguib Mahfouz weaved that into the story, that all of these women characters, in some way or another, are symbol of Egypt herself and her journey of, basically evolution of Egypt, from this docile, submissive, colonized being to, we didn't get to that part in the book, but technically when she, where she gains all her freedom and equality. So I don't know if any of you guys noticed that, but this just kept popping up. You have the Egypt who's like, the belly dancer, who's promiscuous, who does whatever she wants. And then you see the way that the men treat her versus the way they treat the traditional Amina, and how she's submissive and how they just keep her at home. The double standard again, and then reflected in the way that these people want to see their country, or see their country, how everybody wants to see their country evolve. And everybody has a different vision for their country. Some people want to stay old style, old rule, traditional ways. Some people want more progressive ways. And you see that argument sort of with the different parties, political parties. Some people want more control. Some people want less control. And I think you see that played out in the relationships between the men and the women in the book. If anybody noticed
And
that.
also through Kamal. I mean, like Kamal as well. Like, he went through like the changes that what you're saying. From what I understood as well is so Kamal was at the beginning, like very submissive, and he was following all the rules at house, and then eventually he started to think and to doubt, and eventually sometimes he was paralyzed between like different opinions and being exposed to the West and all this. I thought it was more as well has to do with Kamal.
Yeah. He was my favorite character, actually.
It's supposed to reflect Naguib Mahfouz himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That would
that's
make
what I read.
that would make sense from the all the long reflection paragraphs that he has, uh, where he's questioning everything, questioning, the meaning of life and the purpose and why. That would make sense that he's supposed to be representative of Mahfouz himself. Yeah. The only pages that I marked in this book were Kamel's passages when he's thinking to himself and thinking about the meaning of life and the meaning of pleasure and finding joy and finding the meaning of your life. Those were the only things that I marked, actually. or his passages.
Yeah, to your point, Kamal represented the psychological depth, I think. His character was deeply human, with like there's a lot of conflict inside of him, and Mahfouz was trying to mirror that in his character, how is he going to react? What is he going to do? Also about say the same thing, there is psychological depth in the whole three novels, I think, that he was trying to pinpoint, because I don't think, okay, even if it was accepted in society back then that you can have more than, one lover, for example, that it was okay inside of him. If I think if we dig deeper in Sayyid at the end of Sukkariya, he was trying to repent for everything he's done.
Yeah.
He was, in my opinion, he felt like God is doing things because he did bad in his life, like his daughter that her daughter died, the husband died, the two kids died. It was just like maybe that's, karma.
Mm.
I felt like there is a psychological depth in his novel, plus the history that he was, because personally I don't know a lot of history.
Mm.
I never went to schools in Egypt, so there was a lot of history
Yeah.
in the three novels, and he did it very, very well. Like you see, it was like the First World War until the 50s.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well written, I have to say. I mean, he got a Nobel Prize for it.
Yeah. Right. I think for me, because several characters would, Sisayed and his friends, they would allude to the fact that, we know what we're doing is wrong, but we also know we're going to reach a point where we're going to repent. So, let's just enjoy it. And then, when we get old or when we get tired of all this, we all know we're going to repent. And, hopefully, before we die, have repented before we die, hopefully get God's forgiveness. This really irked me. This, like, no, like you can't just intentionally, say, okay, I'm going to just do everything I want to do, but I know I'm going to repent in the end. So let me just keep doing it and everything is going to be fine. I hadn't thought of your point of the karma, but that definitely makes a lot of sense right now. I mean, whether his children or his grandchildren, they all suffered a lot. And it's not far off to say that that's a result of his plenty of sinning on his side, you know. Um, but I just wasn't convinced with this that everybody just repents at the end. I mean, obviously, yes, you do, but that they had no problem. I think this was my issue. They had no problem being very open about it, that we're just going to do whatever we want to do. And we all know we're going to repent at the end. So just enjoy it while it lasts.
I agree. I can't like it's wrong is wrong, right?
Yeah. I think what's shocking is that the degree of, scandal, scandal and promiscuity at that time. And that Mahfouz had, obviously, authors will do that. They have no problem, revealing the ugly truths of society, but it it was extreme. It was extreme. And I don't know to what extent uh that was the case or not. I can't imagine that it wouldn't be, knowing how thorough somebody like Mahfouz would be in his research and in his writing. But this was not on any level how you would have expected the general population. Not their behavior wasn't just on an exceptional basis. It was like entire society functioned this way. Even the smart ones, even the philosophical ones.
I think he magnified everything,
Mm,
right? He magnified it to an extent where to show you that it existed and it was rooted in the society.
mm,
But maybe it was a bit too much. Too much. Uh, I think he was just trying to portray like the different also classes again and how each class reacted. Like for example, when Kamal fell in love with this rich girl, I don't remember her name,
I,
Ida,
Ida.
Ida, and then his other friend, how malicious he was to take her away from him and marry her, and she knew what Kamal was feeling for her, right? But then in the Sukkariya, when her was it her sister
Yeah.
Budur?
Yeah.
She falls for Kamal, but Kamal is still thinking about Aida. And it's like, but there's an age difference, like a huge gap. Like this Budur, you were kissing her like when
Yeah.
she was a child, you
Yeah.
know? So for me, I felt like he was trying to magnify everything, trying to put everything under the microscope, the society, how it was like separate, not separated, but he was cutting through layers of
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, no, it's really nice.
It was really good. I was shocked when Ida died. I think that was there were so many shocking moments, but this is the one where I was as I was reading, and I had to take a moment, the only moment in the book. Lots of things shocked me, but not like this. I don't know why, because he didn't really go into a lot of depth with Ida, and it was only a very short part out of the three works. But I think, because for me, Kamel was my favorite character. I think the effect that she had on him, you know, from when he met her until the end, and the fact that he went to her funeral not knowing that it was her funeral. um this little part of the book, had a huge impact on me. I felt very, very, very sorry for Kamel. I felt generally very sorry for him from the beginning of this very sad love story until the end. The turmoil that he felt, the pain that he felt, the this continuous, inner turmoil of trying to figure out who he was and what he wants, and trying to be something in the world, and then sort of not really measuring up in the end and questioning everything that he'd done. So also then at the end of that, to find out that she died and he walked in her funeral without knowing that it was her, just felt like it was a bit too much for a human being.
But don't you find that Kamal also has like issues because then he was this like philosophical person trying to figure out things, and then all of a sudden he switched and he goes to brothels and he goes to, you know,
But I think that's sometimes what happens.
that's
People who go to like one extreme to the, I think then it doesn't work, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah, you put all of your faith in one ideology or one way of being, and then it sort of completely blows up in your face. So then,
Mm.
well, then, what was the point of everything that I was doing? What was the point of my lofty ideals, my pursuing, just education for the sake of education? I don't really care about a position. I don't care about a title. And he didn't get it in the end.
But I didn't sense that when he went there he was happy either.
No.
Like, you know?
It was temporary. He says, when I get drunk, when I'm intoxicated, it's the only, few moments where I can feel, he says, or I can feel some kind of happiness and just lose myself temporarily. An escape.
Yeah. Also loved the way he described all the different marketplaces, the alleys. It's like he's putting you in the mood of that era
Yeah.
vividly. It wasn't just like, oh, this alley is like this, whatever. I didn't mark places in the book or anything, but the description was very, very vivid, you know?
I mean, I think all of us at the most basic level have been to Khan el Khalili at least, you know. So when he does describe, you know, the canopies and the shops close together and the coffee shops, you know, if you haven't even seen, you know, the rest of the areas that he's describing, you have that image. So it's very easy to place the characters. It's very easy to create the imagery of this, where the story, the like sort of the setting of the story. And then we can just relate to it because it's here. It's not like, you know, uh Pride and Prejudice, where you have to figure out, you know, where this where these far out villages are and what they might look like. We actually know what the setting of the story looks like. Anybody else on favorite or least favorite characters?
I felt sorry a bit for Sisayed,
Mm.
where we saw there was a moment when he found out about his son, and the relationship he had with the dancer.
Mhm.
That was, I think, I I didn't see. That's when the only time I saw weakness. Um, in him. Not, I didn't even see weakness when his son died.
Mm.
He was able to hide it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was maybe the only time I felt sorry for him, and uh, felt, and I don't know whether he I don't know how. I know he accepted it, like you said, he accepted the marriage, but I don't know. Um, I didn't understand that part. I don't know how he was able to accept, because I know that he wasn't on good terms generally with his with the older son. He wasn't really accepting um, any marriage when he wanted to marry that other the one that his brother. I can't remember her name now, but yeah, that was the only time I saw weakness with Said. It was seeing him in a different light.
With Yassine, because I think,
Yes, yeah.
you know how when you see your faults in your own children, or you have
Mm,
one child
mm,
out of several who's the one who has all of your
exactly.
what you consider your bad habits,
Mm,
bad traits.
mm,
And I think obviously that was Yassine, you know, for society,
mm,
because
mm,
he was following straight in his father's footsteps, right? He was
mm,
completely you know, even worse. I mean, he had some a couple of very, very public transgressions, you know. So
mm,
at
mm,
least to say it was
mm,
very discreet. But I think, you know, how when you find that child that really irks you, and they irk you
mm,
because they remind you of the bad things that you do or your bad habits.
mm,
So
mm,
that's, for me, this is how I felt that relationship was. Um,
mm,
on one hand, he might think, you know, he might be proud of his son for following what they believed is sort of the normal progression of you know, going from a
manhood.
child manhood, exactly. But at the
Yeah.
same
Mm,
time, it was a mirror. He was a literal
mm,
mirror to like all his bad deeds, because he was following the steps, but it's one thing for you to be doing something, but then when you see your son or your child
mm,
doing it, and
mm,
it's a
mm,
reflection back
mm,
of all your mistakes. So
mm,
maybe that was the reason he just had to let it go, because who was he?
mm,
Who was he to
mm,
judge at
mm,
the end of the day? He'd made worse mistakes.
mm, mm. Yeah.
What about the sisters? What about Khadija and Aisha? What did you think of them?
I like Khadija.
Sorry?
I liked Khadija.
You liked Khadija? Yeah. She just wants to very argumentative. Yeah, sharp-tongued. She's the opposite of her mom, right? So she wasn't just going to sit there and just
Well,
accept.
we need, like, this house needed that character.
Needed
Somebody had to say something.
somebody had to say something. Yeah.
But she did it at the beginning, she did it like passively, it was just, passive aggressive kind of thing. But I mean, like,
Because of her
I
father.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, but because of her father. That's why I
Yeah.
was gonna say, like, I don't blame her.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't it also interesting that at some point in the book, all of them, even though they were all very scared of their father, and when they discover, especially the men, when they discover his second life, his double life, that none of them really criticize their father. And despite everything he's done, they keep repeating how much they would still do anything for their father. They would still respect their father. Nothing would change how they feel about their father, which is, I mean, kind of a different narrative than we have today. People can very easily, turn against each other, turn against their parents, but that loyalty they had for their father, despite all of his faults and despite everything that he did to them, because even though he was a very him and his friends were very similar in the way that they behaved and carried on with their lives, he was the only one that was really, really, really strict with his family. The other wives of his friends, from what I understood, they would go out to market, they would come, they would go. It was only this family where the girls were never allowed to leave. So despite that they were sort of unique in some of the restrictions, you never felt that they would ever disrespect their father, they would ever sort of rebel against their father, no matter how much they disagreed with him, no matter how much he upset them. It always came back to respect, always with their father, no matter what.
Yeah, that struck me too, honestly. I remember there is one part when the Brits took the father
Mm.
walking in the alley at night or something, and then his two sons saw him, and then I don't know if that was in the movie or in the book, but I
Oh,
remember something like that. And Fahmi said, "We're not going to leave our father be humiliated."
yeah.
But then the older son, Yasin, was like, "No, let him take a taste of his own medicine."
Oh, I think that was in the movie. I don't remember.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, if it was in the movie, he was trying to also, well, it must have been somewhere in the book. He was trying to portray that the same thing that you're saying, that the respect and the love for the father, right? And
Yes.
even when the father passed away, how everybody felt like that's a huge thing.
Huge loss, a huge thing. How can life go
Yeah,
on without him, even though they hated the life that they were living with him?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And to your point, nowadays, I mean, if you have a father like him, okay, and then the kid goes to speak to a therapist or a or a psychologist or whatever, they're gonna tell him disown this guy. Like, why is he treating you that way? Blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And then you'll find people like not respecting their parents. It's definitely changed a lot, and I feel that respect, it came out of fear, yes, but it also came out of being grateful for the life that he was providing them, whatever that life
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
That gratitude is something I feel that we're actually missing right now.
Yeah. It surprised me, but it didn't upset me. I felt like as incorrect as this man's behavior might have been in terms of his double standards and sort of the harshness that he ran his household, especially with his wife, it didn't feel wrong for his family to continue to respect him till the end. I didn't feel that they were, I mean, it was a bit surprising, but I didn't feel like they were weak. I didn't feel like they were oppressed, and so they had to do this. I felt it was genuine love and respect for their father despite his faults. And I felt if I had to choose, between a child going to therapy and never seeing his parents again, and a child sticking with his family and respecting his father no matter what, I would choose that one. I would choose their behavior.
I feel that in that era, and even now, in some like I have Italian friends and stuff like this, family for them is everything.
Mm.
In that era, family was their backbone.
Yeah.
Good or bad, you're
Yeah.
gonna take it as it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
And even my Italian friends, we were actually having that conversation the other day that we were talking about stuff like this, and they were saying the same thing. Good or bad, they're our family.
Yeah.
We didn't choose it,
Mm.
but we have to learn to live with it
Yeah.
and respect and appreciate it.
Yeah. That's what they definitely did.
Also, let's not underestimate that the wife was supporting all along. So I think that's a big part of the unity thing.
Mm.
That she always spoke highly of him. She always respected. So a big part of that was passed on to the kids as well. That's even though with everything that he's doing with his double life. Plus, apparently, he was very well respected in the community as well.
Yes.
So I think there are several factors of why, even with the other parts of his life that's not acceptable, that uh, he was respected.
I mean, all of society was functioning on these precepts, right? But as long as you go and you pray and you go to Friday prayers and you're an honest man and you give to the poor and you provide for your family and your family's respectable and you keep your women sort of hidden, those were all, this is why he was, respected. Um, I think the fact that his wife was so respectful of him, she's the one who was doing all the child rearing completely 100%. So yeah, I agree. She naturally taught them how to be respectful, how to be kind, how to be dignified, how to respond to their father. She was always the mediator, when they needed something, she was the one who would go and ask. So it was embedded in them definitely from their mother. I agree.
She was so kind, she's so loving, even to the son that wasn't hers.
Yes.
Uh, but I'm just wondering, I go back to a point that you mentioned earlier. I'm just wondering, how is that like, how is that society and different from what now? And if it's actually that different, or it's now because of this internet and social media and everything is out there, it's just communicate it's different communication channels. Maybe it's just the same, but now because you can see everything and everything is out there, but then it wasn't, or it has changed because it's personally I believe that now is we're regressing.
I mean, definitely
As
when it comes to
I
the
will,
family unit, definitely. When it comes to the family
yeah.
unit, there's definitely a regression there. When it comes to the absolute sort of blind respect you give to your parents, that we saw with these families, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I don't think it exists in the same way. I think that's definitely changed. The promiscuity has not changed. I don't think that's ever changed. Um, but it is definitely more It's more easily accessible. It's more
Mhm.
you see it more.
Accessible and acceptable, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So that's why I don't see the difference. يعني apart من at that time يعني it was legalized to with the prostitutions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't see I don't see that big of a difference. On the contrary, I see that we're regressing.
Hmm. I mean, if not regressing, we haven't progressed beyond that. It's just, I think the way that it's done has changed, but the the foundations are still there, unfortunately. The only thing, obviously, that I think that has changed dramatically is, with the onset of the whole feminist movement in the 60s and 70s, and, the way that women then have more of a choice. That's the major, if I would say, the biggest difference between when this book was written and in our modern day. That would be the biggest difference, I believe. Um, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, which is like the differences in the classes and sort of the fluidity that's not there anymore. But in terms of how men treat women, we all know modern day stories that sound exactly like sound exactly like Naguib Mahfouz's characters. Not much of a difference there. Um, so maybe, yeah, maybe we have regressed a bit. At least then, okay, and I'm not obviously agreeing with anything that the men, the double standards, but at least family units didn't break apart. There has to be something to be said for that. I don't agree, obviously, with how these men lived their lives, but there must have been something done, something. The flip side of that, where you were able to maintain a family unit, able to maintain your traditions, able to maintain, that unity and maintain, your kids' love and respect. And definitely we've lost that to an extent.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, that definitely, that unity, the
Yeah,
word unity
yeah,
is not there anymore in anything that we do,
yeah,
whether it's on the family level or even the political level,
yeah.
right? So both, like again, they all came together for the purpose of freeing the country from colonialization. Different classes, different religions, different age groups, different everything. Now you don't have that, you know?
But maybe
It
it's because it's to your point, maybe it's because they were taught your initial education is at home. They
could
always say,
be.
right? So the initial education and forming of your ideals and your morals and your values is the family unit comes first. The our allegiance is to this family unit, and then naturally, then you're going to take that to the next level, which
Yeah,
is what comes next after your family is your bigger family and then your country. So
yeah,
it was a natural it it wasn't something they had to sort of try and dig up from inside them to see how are we going to unite. They already know how because they've learned
yeah,
it from
yeah.
birth.
You're right. You're right. You're right. And the other thing too that I think it just while we're speaking now is the freedom of speech,
Mm,
right? Like they were able to express themselves. Yes, they got killed, whatever, but
yeah,
I felt that there was this freedom of speech that sometimes we're lacking
yeah.
nowadays, right?
And their speech was so for youngsters, right? Like, Kamel, that we see him from a teenager up until his 30s. The depth of thought, like you said, psychological, it's very deep psychological work. Um, and the fact that he was able to go and write about that and express himself, and they're not I mean there was a bit of censorship that happened, you know
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
political turmoil, but it didn't stop them. Like they weren't afraid. They weren't afraid. I think that was the other thing.
The other thing that I also remember now is that we had specific like political characters that were so charismatic
Yes.
that people felt for them and they would do anything for them. And this, to Nermin's point, we're regressing because where are those charismatic characters in our lives right now?
Yeah.
Right? Saad Zaghlul, I don't know what, and you don't have this right now. Where is this charisma?
No.
So yeah, definitely Nermin was right. We are sort of like regressing in quite a bit of things, you know?
We don't have, I don't think any of us in our lifetimes at least has seen that type of charismatic character that makes you want to go and okay, like I'm gonna fight for this. I have a purpose because of what you've said. There isn't a single leader in my lifetime that was gonna get me to go follow him to do anything, not one.
Yeah.
But with these leaders, it was almost blind allegiance. They were that powerful.
They were, yeah. Then it was like with Gamal Abdel Nasser, and I think maybe the last one, maybe Sadat,
Yeah.
was where you felt a bit patriotic.
Patriotic.
Yeah, we lost that along the way, unfortunately.
But
It's
but
sad.
guys,
It's very sad.
it's not even the role models on presidents or even that level. It's they even have role models on teachers and people in their society.
Yeah.
I think it was built that it was that way, and this we would expect then that at the top there will be a leader. I think we like that started from the society, from down in the society, like the teachers, for example, they were very well respected. Teacher is like the Afandi, and it's very well respected, and so they
I
had
think,
role models at every step of their life, in every phase of their life.
yeah, and I think what you said something very important, the idea of respect. There was I cannot imagine like at this time, even though most of my children respect my husband, but there was um, a different level of respect, an unquestionable respect. You just respected, you followed without questioning. There was no questioning. There was trust,
No, but it
whether
was
it's the
out of
father,
fear as well.
son, or sorry?
It was mainly out of fear, not out of just love.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know.
Maybe you're saying
Maybe it,
fear because you mean fear of the father figures, Sayed, but in other aspects of the society, no, I
Mm.
believe it was respect.
It's respect also, and the thing that they always felt like this person knows maybe better. They have that much experience. So I felt like a lot of in the book or back in the days, if you look at different movies, is that people look up to somebody as a role model.
Yes.
You know, now there's no role models. Who are the role models? The Kardashians, for example? Who are the models? You know, it's like when you look at things, even in social media, who are the role models for our kids today?
Disasters.
You know, I watched one series of the Kardashians. I was like, oh my God, like really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
These are going
Yeah.
to be the role models for the society?
They already are. Lisa, they're going to be.
I know, but I'm a bit behind, I guess.
They have been. I also watched I happened to watch because it popped up on my Instagram that she got like a facelift or something recently, and like all of social media was, look at her, facelift, and I was like, what is this? So I went and watched one of their episodes. It's it's nauseating. It's repulsive. There is no positive there's no positive connotation whatsoever.
there's no content. There's no
No substance.
substance. أيوة. There's no substance. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to say something, Dana, when you were saying about how you couldn't find some, like you can relate with that, like finding someone that you change your mindset for, and then, like find your purpose. I actually think you did it. It's just not in a political field, but you did it. You did find that person that changed your mind. I mean, like about the diet and like, like food, and you found your purpose.
I definitely, yes, in that respect, yes. And yes, I mean, if I look at it that way, um, there's been plenty of people that way since, the whole trajectory of changing my health and starting really having my own work and my own passion at 40, and people have helped me form that along the way, definitely. Um, but what would no, I don't want to take away. These were people who really, really did help me and influence me. I was going to say, would I go and die for them? The way that people would follow, sad.
No, it's just because it's a different cause. But I
Yeah,
mean,
a
like,
different
like
call.
you did change.
Yeah, yeah.
You did.
I definitely, yeah, definitely. That's true.
I mean, the diet doesn't require dying for, thank God. But I mean, like,
No, no, definitely there have been, yeah, I guess in the context of this book, I'm thinking of like, has there been a political leader specifically?
right.
And definitely not. No.
No, but there are people that you would take a stand for, right? That you would maybe vouch for if need
Definitely.
be.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yes. Yeah.
And I think again, our kids are lacking this. Our
Yeah.
kids are lacking that. Who's that role model?
Well, I think
If
it's
it's
not
not the
lacking.
father, if
The
it's
problem
not
is they're attaching to themselves to role models for the wrong reasons, I think. I mean, they've got role models, but what are they actually modeling?
And another thing, you need to have a role model means that you need to admit that you don't know everything, and then
Mm.
you're here to learn.
Yes.
So that's something that they struggling with because
Yeah.
they feel like they know everything and they
Yeah.
have access to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. But even adults, right, will have a hard time with this. There's a lot of ego with that. Yeah, I think yeah, maybe there just wasn't a lot of ego in this story. It was very much about the collective effort versus the individual.
yeah, yeah. I mean, try to tell a kid right now that if you're gonna do something, this is gonna hurt me, or your dad is gonna do this, or your mom is gonna do this. It's like, okay, you know.
Yeah, and yeah. Yeah. I told my kids they all need to read this. They didn't say no. They were very interested. They said, maybe after the summer, Mom, we'll read it because it's very long. But
Actually, I borrowed my son's books
oh,
because last time we were in Cairo, he was like so intrigued and he bought them. I don't know if you've ever read them, but I borrowed them from him.
yeah, I think it's a lengthy read, but the one in English is not difficult. And it's a great, I think, introduction into their history that they might not know of. I mean, they know bits and pieces of history. They definitely, because I didn't, never delved so deep into the society this way in the historical context. So it's a great introduction, I think, for our that generation into their history, an easy way to learn their history, to have a better appreciation of the history without it being, just the nuts and bolts and the dates and the people and what happened, but to give it more relatability, I think.
Can we sort of see Amina as Mrs. Bennett?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, all of the women who want to get their daughters married off at some level, you know, Amina to start with. Um,
But definitely no Mr. Dorothy here.
No, definitely
Oh,
not.
Mr. Dorothy, no,
No.
Sandra. No, because I remember when we were doing Pride and Prejudice, we started talking about
Yes.
the Pride and Prejudice and Naguib Mahfouz, and then I don't remember what the conversation was, but we're trying to link the two books. So I think it was Mrs. Bennet that got us going on the conversation.
Yeah.
Oh no, but Amina is so, like she's so calm compared to Mrs. Bennet. Like, Mrs. Bennet was all over the place,
but the
animated and everything.
but the motive is the same, right? Like the
Yeah,
motive.
but I mean, like she wasn't after marrying the girls. I mean, it like I mean I mean, that was not her purpose. I mean, the sole purpose. What that's I don't know. Like Mrs. Bennet, this is the whole scheme of how to get a husband and rich one, but I didn't get that from Amina.
Well, Amina's active role is in finding a husband for her daughter is almost non-existent because she wasn't the one who was going to have to go and meet the men and see which one is appropriate. Like she was never going to do that. But I think the urgency, the motherly, urgency that is very comparable in both of them. That, God willing, she comes. And then when Aisha had the first suitor that they said no because they need her sister to get married first. And, she was disappointed. Then the second one. And so she was like, no, 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 like we can't keep getting in her way. She needs to get married. Like you see that urgency in her. Like she wants her daughters to get married and the worry about Khadija that maybe she wasn't going to get married because of what she looks like. So the the actions around that are going to be different just because of their social circumstances and all of that. But I think deep down, it was exactly the same. If Amina had been given more power, if she had been given more freedom, just physical freedom to leave her house, it might not have been that much different. But she was so constrained.
Yeah, actually, I liked the Turkish lady, and how she had authority over Sayed. I didn't understand because I don't understand like the Turkish effect, but apparently like
Yeah,
this person does have an effect, and it was okay for her to scream at him and
yeah,
and be like rude at him, even if she was at his house.
yes.
She was vocal and everything, and he was okay with that, as
I
long as like she's not Egyptian, or I don't know what it was.
I think it's because she's not Egyptian, and the Turks, I think, because of the Ottoman Empire and the fact that they were
Yeah.
as the rulers and they're strong. These are our leaders. Plus, she was a lot, older than he was. He really didn't have any power over her anyway.
Yes.
I think all of those things it's what allowed her to have these liberties. Like she didn't come from this culture, so he can't expect
Exactly. But which
her.
means that other cultures were okay with that as well. Like, I mean, like other women were that powerful at
Yeah.
that time.
And when you think about it, it was just his family that was so suppressed. The other families in their neighborhood, I mean, he used to see women in the street, like women used to come to his shop, women would go to the mosque, they would go, get it was just his women that were never allowed to leave, but other women were. So he was also showing us the extreme example.
Mm.
But Amina too, like when she was speaking to him, it's just like when Mrs. Bennet was speaking to Mr. Bennet and how Mr. Bennet was dismissive of her conversation. Same goes for Amina. And yeah, she would say whatever she wants to say, but then at the end of the day, it's really what he thinks is gonna go, right? Uh, I like the fact that now when we read books, I started doing it, is that I'm trying to find a link with the different books that we read
Mhm.
or the different characters. And I think Pride and Prejudice, and what was the other book that we read? Was it Tess? The female character that she committed suicide in the end or something. How was it? Was it that
Yeah.
book? Can we link her to
I mean,
one of
Tess
the
was also
characters?
very, very passive. Her mother was also, trying to get her married off, hers was but Tess had a very just, I mean, Tess reminds me more of Aisha, with the death of a child and just one horrible thing after the other just befalling her. Like she never gets a break. Like it's just until finally she gets, convicted. So there's always going to be some thread that you can find between all the books because you're talking about human beings and you're talking about human nature, which we've all just established that basically we're all still the same today from this book. How many years on? Almost 100 years on from this book. And then you see that at the end of the book, right? At the very last paragraph where Yassine goes off to buy baby clothes, right? And Kamel goes to buy another black tie, which is basically just showing that it's just cyclical. It's just, birth and death and birth and death, and it's just an ongoing cycle, and there's no getting out of it. That's just life and everything in between.
Yeah.
But this is life. Like, doesn't matter what year.
Yeah. Like he didn't give us some dramatic ending to the book, right? It wasn't some huge conclusion even that he doesn't even draw like a big conclusion at the end. It's just very simply, right, this one just had a baby. They're expecting another death. Let's go. The practicalities of it, which is just symbolic of just how life keeps going on no matter what.
Yeah, the continuity.
Continuity.
Yeah. No, a great choice of book, actually. Yeah. And it brings it down to our own society,
Mhm.
right? It's our roots, most of us. So it was quite interesting to see it, like, or to read it, basically, and feel like, oh, I can relate to this kind of, or these are my people.
Yeah, there's a connection. There's a strong connection, I think, and that, yeah, definitely contributed to the enjoyment of the book, just pure enjoyment of it, that you can relate. Even though on some level with all the other books, you might relate to something in one of the characters, but just because they're a different nationality, they live in a different country, it's a different society, there's going to be something that is going to break that relatability on some level. But with this, there was nothing. For me, it was on every single level, the language, the mannerisms, the the certain sayings, the phrases, the food, you know, the imagery, all of it.
Yeah.
Made the whole thing very, very close.
Yeah. It reminded me of my grandparents. So how my grandma used to deal with my granddad, for example, not to the extent of this Sayed, and my granddad wasn't like this guy, but the fact that that kind of respect, that kind of love
Yeah.
that was so obvious to everybody, no matter what my granddad used to do, she'd say, "Oh, malishi, because of this." Oh, she'll find a reason why he's doing it.
Yeah, yes, 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 yes.
So, and this is how I related a little bit to Amina as well, even though, like, yeah, I found it was too much, but yeah, it was what it is back then.
She didn't know otherwise.
And she was happy
Yeah.
in her own way. Like thinking about my grandma right now and talking about her, I think she was
Yeah.
quite content with her life.
Yeah, yeah. They were.
You know, the
We can't
questions,
imagine it, but they were.
yeah, they were. But the questions that we currently have as women that we're trying to search for, that we're trying to do this, that we're trying to do that, it wasn't even there. You know, they were just happy people.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe a return to this more simplistic way of being and living. Maybe we're just trying to figure out too much all at once, when the answer is just to do less and maybe not be less, but do less.
Or just live the moment. Just live it fully and truly and not overthink it.
Anybody else, ladies? Anything that through the conversation now has brought up another insight you've had from the book or something you'd like to share? Final thoughts.
My final thought is about the music that you've been sharing with us,
Oh,
which is amazing. It's really nice.
oh, good. I'm happy.
And then again, music, link it to what Naguib Mahfouz was saying. Well, Said was going to these places and whatever. Music was a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Music was like part of their joy, right?
They
So I think,
all had music memorized.
yeah,
They could all
yeah,
just start singing, bits and pieces
yeah,
of songs at the time. I couldn't recognize anything, and I don't know.
yeah.
There's nothing no lyric in there that rang any kind of bells for me. But yeah, they didn't shy away from enjoy. Obviously, we see how he used to enjoy his nights, but music and singing and um, the feelings or the elation that music can bring, that was something that was very close, wasn't distant from them. They all listened to music, they all knew lyrics to songs, they had no problem memorizing them, sharing them. Yeah. All right, ladies, thank you for another great session. If you're still in the middle of reading this book, don't get discouraged. Don't look at how long it is. Literally just give yourself 30 minutes a day with this book. It is a masterpiece. And it just keeps getting better and better and better. Give yourself the chance, not just because we had our call today. Give yourself the chance to finish it. It really is worth the read 100%. We only have two more sessions together, ladies. So next week we have another call to talk about joy and passion. And then our final book is I Saw Ramallah in 2 weeks. So yes, it has been a great 6 months. I mean, we'll talk about that, but it really has. So if Ramallah is also a short read, so if you haven't started it, definitely you can start it and finish it in 2 weeks. And what a great, serendipity that it's the last book that we're reading in these next 2 weeks, given the circumstances. But, again, allow yourself the time and the space to invest. This has been an investment for sure when it comes to taking the time to sit with a book and lose yourself in a book. So it's one more stretch, one more book. Hopefully you're not going to stop with this next book. You'll keep it going. But for the purposes of our time together, one more book, ladies. So go for it. And we're together in the group until I see you all next week, inshallah. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day and evening. And I'll see you next week, ladies. Good night.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.